if I had known what I know now when I was 15, going through so many emotional changes, not realizing, why I'm yelling at my parents or, why I'm like getting agitated with my partner and so many different things. And then, how many of us had those, we snap and then 2 days later we get our periods and we're like, oh, that's why.
Welcome to Self Heal with Dr. Irene, where you'll learn powerful tools from world-class experts to heal yourself in all areas of your life, your health and energy, relationships, career, finances, and more. Welcome to Self Heal with Dr. Irene, and today I have Nicole Bendayen with me. Nicole is a cycle syncing nutritionist, and she helps women overcome the havoc caused by hormones and their cycle to turn it into their superpower by balancing their hormones, supporting their bodies, and predicting their cycles through nutrition and lifestyle synchronization. Like so many other women that often suffer in silence or are dismissed by the healthcare system, Nicole had to navigate the pain, cognitive frustration, and hormonal symptoms caused by her cycle with little direction toward information. Now she uses her education and experience to help women one-on-one to tailor their nutrition and lifestyle to their individual needs and cycles so that they can reduce negative symptoms caused by hormones and thrive both personally and professionally. So thank you so much for joining me, Nicole.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it was totally my pleasure. So Nicole, I'm going to ask the one question that popped into my head, and maybe listeners might be thinking as well, just, even though I read your intro. And cycle syncing nutrition, when I first said that, honestly, I guess I went to bicycle.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people go to.
And, so could you please just expand on what cycle syncing nutrition, that's even challenging to say, cycle syncing nutrition, and what is it in a greater detail, and then how women can do it for themselves?
Sure. So cycle syncing is all about the practice of tailoring your nutrition and your lifestyle to the different phases of your cycle. Like I said, wasn't informed or didn't really know anything about my cycle when I was younger, up until a few years ago, really, when I started to get into hormones and the effects that they have on the body. And I realized that majority of women, and, me being a, apparently educated, well-functioning member of society, wasn't informed about these things that are so basic in a woman's biology. And then as I continued to look at it, I noticed that there is so much research about our cycles and how to support our bodies through each of the 4 phases of our cycles. And I didn't even know there was 4 phases to begin with. But as I got into it, I realized there's 4 phases, and each phase, there's different ways to support your body and your mind through it. And as well, looking at everything in a holistic lens. It's really cool once you also synchronize your career and your productivity to the different phases of your cycle to really optimize productivity, as well as in relationships, being able to effectively communicate with people and to build confidence. So cycle syncing, in a really quick way, is just the practice of tailoring your nutrition and lifestyle to the different phases of your menstrual cycle.
Thank you so much for that explanation. And for the record, having both my MD and my DC, I can tell you, in conventional medicine, we don't learn about, we learn the 4 phases of the cycle, and it's more tailored toward, this is what's happening physiologically, and this is what happens reproductively, and this egg gets released on this date, and 14 days later, blah, blah, blah. Right. It's nothing that's taught in conventional medicine prepares a woman for what actually happens. So whether it's, and there'll be like broad spectrum of, typical PMS symptoms are la, 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 la. or typical perimenopausal or menopausal symptoms are this. Until you're going through it, it's kind of like having a baby. It's like once you experience it, you're like, oh,
Yeah.
and it's almost like, okay, so if it hasn't got anything to do with reproduction, then it's yeah, it's just that womanly thing. She's got her mood on, or she's got right. And so I think that's part of it, is the stigma around women's hormones. It's like, oh, a woman's hormonal, right? She's emotional. She's right. It's so there's all these stereotypes and stigmas around that. I believe in, even historically, and I've discussed this with other experts I've had on who come at it from different directions, that we do a grave disservice to over half the world's population, because historically women's cycles were, and the hormones and everything, we were it was like just further proof of the weaker sex. Right. And it was like that thing. It was almost like something to be not almost, it was something to be ashamed
100%.
of. And they didn't even understand, like in primitive cultures, women were bleeding, therefore they must be possessed by the devil, like every single month. So that's why they're so impure. And it was just like, just everything around it. And it's time to demystify it. And it's time to bring it out into the open. I love how you call it your superpower.
Because it can be used for your superpower. And it's so interesting. Very well said. Exactly what you said. And, especially in the Western world, we're very much focused on the male dominant society. So in the male dominant society, we're on a circadian rhythm, which is the wake and sleep cycle. And there's no regard to the infradian rhythm, which is the feminine cycle. And the same way that at different times of the day, you have different abilities to do things. You have clearer mind, or you have a little bit more energy, or it's better time to take a moment to relax. The same thing happens with our infradian rhythm, that we're able to use that full 28 to 34 day cycle to optimize not only our health, because it's so important to our health, but also to optimize our productivity and our businesses and so many other aspects of our lives by living in tune with this huge part of ourselves. And you're so right. In so many cultures, it's looked at as a negative thing. And I think a lot of us still view it that way. When a woman has, these statistics always blow my mind, but a woman has approximately 451 menstrual cycles in her life, spanning 38.5 years. So viewing such a significant part of ourselves through a negative lens, of course, is going to affect us negatively. When we're able to live in alignment with our cycles, understand our bodies, that is such an incredible way to build confidence, to build identity, to really feel at home in your body. And when that happens, there's such far-reaching benefits.
I love what you're putting down there. And or is it the phrase, I'm picking up what you're putting down? You know what I mean? Because, I have read and know that there are certain times that a woman is naturally more confident and more outgoing, and right, versus where perhaps other times where she naturally feels the need to retire within, right? And this idea that we could live with our cycles rather than despite our cycles, right?
Yeah, it's very powerful. It's very powerful. And there is so much research out there about the different hormones that are involved and the impact it has. And I find a lot of value in educating and understanding our cycle through the biological level, as well as, that of course affects the emotional level, the cognitive level. And it's really interesting to be able to separate ourselves from our hormones in a certain way and like understand that that's not just us, quote unquote. Because, if I had known what I know now when I was 15, going through so many emotional changes, not realizing, why I'm yelling at my parents or, why I'm like getting agitated with my partner and so many different things. And then, how many of us had those, we snap and then 2 days later we get our periods and we're like, oh, that's why, and it kind of gives us that like release from the shame that's associated with it, or also the guilt of why we may be acting or responding in certain ways. And when you're able to cycle sync and able to understand your cycle, not only can you mitigate a lot of those symptoms, but you also can better communicate and, you just understand yourself a lot better.
It's like if somebody is aware of their cycle and knows that at a certain time, they're going to be their threshold for stress and strain and exhaustion is going to be lower, then that is to me beautiful knowledge that instead of trying to power through it, as you say, with the circadian rhythm, right? It's just like, we're going to give it the old college try. We're just going to keep going. We're going to keep muscling through it, understanding that it's also a message to us to listen. And that's perhaps the time to allow ourselves that space to take a day, a couple days, and just to be more introspective and to care for ourselves and to love ourselves. And I say that knowing, and I'm totally with you about how nutrition can improve those symptoms. In other words, it's not just a matter of living with them and rolling with the punches or going with the flow, pun intended. It could be, right? For instance, and I know you can speak to this, it's like that inflammation ramps up in your body right before you get your period. So that inflammation, there is so much that can be done naturally and with nutrition to calm those fires of inflammation down so that the impact isn't as much. So I would love for you to really just to give us some tips and tools of what we can do when we hit the challenging moments, please.
Sure. So I love to focus on the PMS type. So there's actually 5 different types of PMS that many women either experience one or several of these symptoms. And I can go over them really briefly just to give you a view of them. But so the first type is type A, and that's anxiety. That's with the mood swings and the agitation. Then you have type C, which is cravings, and that's often craving carbohydrates, but other symptoms of that include fatigue and headaches. There's also type D, which is depression, including confusion and memory loss. Type P, which is pain. So that's the cramping, the back aches. That also includes acne and oily skin. And then the last one is type W or H, which is water retention or hyperhydration. And that is when you're experiencing bloating, you may gain weight, you could have breast tenderness and swelling. So each of those 5 different PMS types have a natural protocol that you can follow in the days leading up and throughout your cycle that can really, really help lower those symptoms.
And I love this knowing, because again, this isn't covered, just like there's 5 different types of menopause that aren't covered in conventional medicine. So, and it's very similar. I know, and I know I'm preaching to the choir there. And I want to quickly say, because obviously we're not going to be able to get to everything here today. And at the same time, I know you have like an assessment that women can go and take and determine what their type is, right?
Yes, I have a free PDF that you can get on my website. And in that PDF, there
Thanks for listening to Self Heal with Dr. Irene. Please head over to iTunes to subscribe and leave a review. By doing so, this will help us reach more people with our message. Be sure to visit www.selfheal.life to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content. And keep listening for more insights and tools to empower you to heal yourself and enjoy life to the max.